Welcome back. We got our X factors for the Eastern Conference. I do want to say, when I say playoff X factors for the Eastern Conference and even for the West, understand that the playoffs in today's game are the top six seeds. I don't know what exactly going to happen for the play in. I can't predict the 7 and 8. And a lot of people don't even really care about those last spots in the conferences, I've noticed when I've done full playoff breakdowns. So we're going to go with the concrete top six, right? The solidified playoff teams and their X factors. We're going to start at the top of the conference with the Detroit Pistons, a team that I mentioned before. Tough night against the Spurs really reveal some of the issues that they can run into in the postseason. That's why, for me, one of the biggest X factors is Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson is the X factor here, and I do want to say for a lot of these teams, like the Pistons, there are a lot of qualified options for the X factor. So if you don't agree with my X factor, I would not be mad at you at all. I know some people could say Asar Thompson, some people could say Beef Stew, because they missed him last year in the Knicks series. But I'm gonna go Duncan Robinson because of the 3-point shooting. He's right now currently the only player on their team that plays, right, that's registered as a 40% 3-point shooter. And the thing about him is the 3-point shooting, I think, opens up a lot of gravity for obviously Cade Cunningham, but also the two-man game between Cade and Jalen Duren, right? Their pick and roll and that lob synergy that they have. It's harder to guard when you're able to have attention being drawn on Duncan Robinson. I do believe when we get to the playoffs in a 7-game setting and series, teams are going to be willing to really dive and lock in on Cade Cunningham and dare others to beat them. And if you have Asar Thompson as a limited shooter, if you have Tobias Harris kind of settling in as a middle tier shooter, you're going to need a legitimate sniper, and Duncan Robinson is going to do that. And even Duncan Robinson and what he can provide, there still may be teams that are saying, hey, let Duncan Robinson beat us from three, but what we're not going to do is allow Cade Cunningham to play at that superstar level that we've seen all season long. And granted, that will be harder, said than done. But I'm looking at Duncan Robinson as well because he's also one of their weaker defenders or the weakest defender in the starting lineup group. And if you're playing against the Knicks, if you're playing against the Celtics, if you're playing against these teams, the Cavaliers, they're going to try to exploit him as a defensive weak link in order for him to be played off of the floor because now your other options coming off the bench can't shoot the ball like him. So the Pistons are a great team. I think they're cut out for the playoffs. I love their physicality. I love their defense. I think Cade Cunningham is a superstar, and he's only going to get better and better. But I do think that Duncan Robinson and his ability to stay on the floor as a defender in a 7-game series and him being this level of a shooter, because we've seen certain series where sharp shooters are just not at their peak of the powers, right? And you don't want, as the Detroit Pistons, Duncan Robinson running into one of those series where he just ain't got it. Because if he can't give you the 3-point shooting, I have no other place that they can get it from. And last year they had Malik Beasley, they had Tim Hardaway Jr., they had some options. This team just doesn't have that many options outside of Duncan Robinson, so they're going to need him to really be able to knock it down. For the Celtics, I got Payton Pritchard. They were a team that had a bunch of different options as well. I looked at maybe Vooch being an X factor. I even thought about Derek White being an X factor. We all know Jason Tatum is probably the easiest X factor in his return that we could talk about. But I'm gonna go Payton Pritchard. There are some interesting things with Payton Pritchard. They're 18-3 in games where he scores 20 or more. They're also 7-1 in the month of February with Payton Pritchard averaging 21, 6, and 3 on shooting splits of 52, 45, 89. And during this current 3-game winning streak that they're on, he's now averaging 27, 8, and 5 on 62, 53, 83. So Payton Pritchard and his scoring ability and his aggression, when it's clicking, the Celtics are almost unbeatable, as we can see. But there has been times throughout the season where it's not has been consistent. And I understand it's a new overlook of a team, right? They have a lot of different moving pieces and changes that they had to accumulate or accommodate, during the course of the season. And then you bring in Vooch, you lose Anthony Simons. I just love the aggression that Payton Pritchard has played with over the last month or so. And I would love to see him continue to play at this level. And I think when it comes to the playoffs, especially again in those 7-game series, a lot of teams, depending on whatever happens with Jason Tatum, they're going to put a lot of emphasis on making sure that they limit Jaylen Brown. And when they do that, they're going to need, number one, the shot making to be at an all-time level, right? That's always going to be the brand of basketball that the Celtics play. But they're also going to need some shot creation. They're going to need somebody else to take some pressure off of Jaylen Brown. And I think Payton Pritchard is that little X factor that can do that at a consistent basis, and again make life easier for Derek White and Jaylen Brown. And again, when he has been on and when he's been aggressive and when he's putting the ball in the basket, along with Derek White and Jaylen Brown, this has been a very difficult and tough team to beat. So I want to see Payton Pritchard continue that for the rest of the season and come playoff time. For my Knicks, don't know about y'all at home. It is always tougher and harder to evaluate your own team. So it was tough. The Knicks is like the last team I did in the East because I went through so many different people that I felt could be an X factor. I ended up with Landry Shamet. And one of the things that led me to Landry Shamet is in the games that he has played so far, he has brung a playoff type of energy in some of these games. He's had some very big moments, right? The defense that he provides to our team and the way that our defense looks, even from an analytical standpoint, when he's on the floor compared to when he's not, has been incredible. The shot making, right? And again, the timing of his shots. He's a guy that has made some big shots in some of the games that he's played already, to the point where he's kind of giving me some Dante DiVincenzo-esque vibes. Is he having a season that Dante DiVincenzo had a few years ago with us? Absolutely not. Right? Dante DiVincenzo had a miraculous year. He was arguably the best three-point shooter that year. But it's just the moments and the feeling that some of these shots have been like throughout the course of this regular season thus far. And I am betting my bottom dollar that Landry Shamet is going to have some of those same moments, big moments, during our playoff run. There's going to be a game 5 or a game 6 or a home game where we're going to need a clutch shot, and it's going to be in the hands of Jalen Brunson, and somehow he's going to kick it out, and Landry Shamet is going to be in a corner on a wing, and he's going to make the dagger 3 or the 3 to tie the game. I'm telling you, I can visualize it and see it in Madison Square Garden. Now, to add on to Landry Shamet, overall, our bench is going to be a big thing because we have so many different options, which is always a good issue to have. But it is sometimes tough as a coach to have so many options. But when you think about what Landry Shamet could provide off the bench, when you think about Jordan Clarkson and his ability to be a microwave scorer, I've seen good things from Diawara, Mitchell Robinson and his health, and if he's going to be able to be ready to give us, a full playoff run. When you talk about Deuce McBride returning for the playoffs, the Knicks have a lot of different options. It's going to be up to Mike Brown to find the right combinations for each and every series. And I didn't even mention Jose Alvarado, who was almost the X factor for the segment, Jeremy Sohan. The Knicks are in a really good spot. But again, it's about figuring out the proper combinations. And I think ultimately those combinations will feature Landry Shamet, and he will deliver for the New York Knicks come postseason. The Cavaliers, I thought about going Dennis Schroeder because I saw what he was able to do for the Pistons last year off of their bench as a guard. But then they went out and got James Harden. And I don't know how much they're going to need Dennis Schroeder in his backup point guard role because James Harden is going to do a damn good job and he's going to be available consistently. And Dennis Schroeder has not shot the ball too well to start his Cavalier tenure. So I pivoted to Jalen Tyson. And it's one of my guys, obviously a big fan of Jalen Tyson and what he's been able to do this year. But as of lately, they've been starting Dean Wade. And now if you bring Jalen Tyson into a bench role for the Cleveland Cavaliers in a playoff series, I think you're even more dangerous, and he becomes even more of an X factor because he's a Swiss Army knife type of wing who can score the ball. He can pass. He can rebound. He can have some defensive moments. He can play off the catch. He can create his own shot at times. This is a guy that's had 39-point game this year. He's had a few double-digit rebound games. He's had games with 5+ assists. He's had games with 5 or more made threes. He's had games with 3 steals. He's just doing a little bit of everything, kind of like what we saw from him in college at California. So having that off the bench for this Cavaliers team, I think could really go a long way, especially, again, if you're putting him in a bench role. So Jalen Tyson, Cleveland Cavaliers, he's their X factor. The Raptors, a little bit unfair to put a rookie as an X factor, but CMB. I love what CMB is able to do as a defender, and when you pair that with Scotty Barnes and you understand how they like to get in transition for fast break points, I think CMB and his rebounding also helps because of the Jakob Poeltl in his back and his inconsistency to be available. CMB is going to play a huge role for them. Now, offensively, they're going to figure some things out. But again, if you're not going to be able to get the rebound and an inside presence from Jakob Poeltl, you got to double down on causing havoc defensively, and CMB can do that with Scotty Barnes. And then last but not least, the Philadelphia 76ers is Paul George. Coming off of the 25-game suspension, he might be well rested, but they're going to need him to give them what they signed up for when they gave him his contract. This is a team that we've talked about for months now as a low-key, dangerous playoff opponent that a lot of teams won't want to face in the first round. Maxey has been spectacular, and Embiid is looking better and better. If you can get some vintage Paul George in there, this is a juggernaut waiting to explode and ruin somebody's playoff hopes. So those are Eastern Conference X factors. We'll be back with the Western Conference after this break.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.